And welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. Shaun, Haney, your host. Really appreciate you joining us here today. If you have a question for our guest, make sure you ask it in the comment box, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. We've covered a lot of big topics this week. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion because we're talking to a really good friend of mine, Clinton Griffiths. He is the host of AgDay. Hey, Clinton, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? We're having our own North American summit here, I guess, today.
Well, yeah, you know, Trudeau and Trump couldn't get together, so, hey, you and I can take care of business. Why not?
That's right. We can sort a bunch of stuff out. That's no problem.
But that's what we said from the very, very beginning of the whole NAFTA talks, is that, you know what, just get a couple of us in the room. We'll sort it out. We'll sort it out. And actually, your colleague, Tyne Morgan, host of U.S. Farm Report, I was actually at her house that weekend before they came to a final agreement. That was a huge, we laughed that we took, basically took credit for it. We sorted out the issues.
Yeah, that's right. You know what is interesting is that at least we're finally coming to the end of this thing. And after, 2 years of reporting on it and the discussions and the tense back and forth, it feels like, okay, here we go. We made it. And then now we're moving on to something else.
Yeah, does it feel a little bit ho-hum in the celebration? And what I mean by that is, like, during the negotiations, at Real Agriculture, we talked about it a lot. Down, at AgDay and the Farm Journal properties, you guys talked about it a lot. And it was such a big deal. And now that they have an agreement, or a couple years later, it's sort of like, man, did we really think we were actually going to lose it? It feels kind of low key.
It does. It feels real low key. I think if we would have lost it, and that's just it. The uncertainty of the negotiating team. I think a lot of us didn't know. How tense could this get? Right. If we did lose it, it could be a really big thing because we are each other's biggest customers. And it's a very important, from an agricultural perspective, trading relationship. And so I think, that's why we covered it so hard, and tried to dig into all the details and find out exactly what it means. But, Shaun, I don't know that we're really going to be able to tell everyone, hey, this is the big impact of this new agreement versus the old one for another 5 years, right? We're going to have to kind of implement it and kind of see if anything really changes. And I know they did rewrite some stuff, but it doesn't feel like there's a bunch of difference in this version.
Yeah, and a lot of trade experts have said that to me, where they describe it as they picked around the edges, so to speak. They updated some things that need to be updated. A lot of those things were actually updated in the TPP. But you know what? Hey, it's settled. We're moving on, and I think that's, as we talked about the whole time during the renegotiation, this is an important agreement, especially for agriculture. Canadian dairy lost some, U.S. dairy gained some. The wheat thing they sort of figured out on the grading perspective. I don't really see a lot of more cross-border trade there, U.S. wheat coming north. But the big thing is signed and delivered, and we can move on to more important things like the never-ending saga of China.
Right. And that is. And I've got a story in tomorrow's show that I just read on trade with China. And, it continues to be that. And I think, again, from the same perspective of it is a big market, it is an important market for U.S. growers. If you lose it, then yeah, that's a definite hit, But on the other side of things, Shaun, and I don't know where folks are, farmers in Canada are coming from with the Chinese trade negotiations and relationship, but at some point it's just kind of like, let's get this thing just done and move on. Like they're just kind of tired of discussing it, because what can you and I do about talking about it? Like, or even a farmer at their house, in South Dakota, what are they going to do in that trade relationship with China? They're just kind of like, okay, buy my soybeans or don't. I'm just going to try to survive on the margins I can get.
Yeah, there's so much like noise back and forth, like, right? It's really hard to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff in that news cycle of all of it. Like, one day it's great, they're best friends, the two leaders, Trump and Xi. The next minute they're not. There's complications of a Canada being involved with the Huawei CFO. We've had our own ups and downs with China, and lately it's in the news it's bad, but they're still buying some ag commodities. So from an ag perspective, it's not too bad. It's just really confusing for a lot of people as they're ripping through their field on a sprayer.
I know, and that's that's where our focus is. And I guess when I've talked to farmers, and a lot of them have asked me, what can we do about this? What should we be doing about this? And it's really, you've got to try to focus on the bottom line that you have now and try to do the very best job you can do. And, hope the rest of that, just have faith that that's just going to work itself out at some point, because in the end of the day, the entire globe has to eat. We still have to feed people. And if, people get hungry, then, the U.S. and Canada are going to have tons of product to sell them.
Now, Clinton, as the host of AgDay, and everybody, if you haven't seen AgDay, I encourage you to check it out. You can find it on RFD TV. You can also hear it actually on Rural Radio 147, the same channel as RealAg Radio is on. Clinton, you're putting together a 30-minute ag-based TV show every weekday. Man, that there's a lot that kind of goes into that. How do you have to sort of figure out what needs to be packed into that 30-minute show?
Well, there's a lot of, we've got a crew of people here. So
you have a crew?
Well, I've got a crew of like 3 of us.
Okay, same here. So,
we've kind of got a team, and we sit down and we talk every morning and try to say, okay, what's big today? What's happening in DC or around the world? What's the weather doing? Because obviously, day to day is weather dependent. And then, try to look at some trends. And this whole coronavirus thing has been, from a coverage standpoint, just hyper intense. And you've probably felt that too, where it was, a lot of times it's the crop progress report on Monday is the lead of the show. And here lately, there's just been so many other things going on that, we're giving it 20 seconds in the show just because, okay, the crops are in, they're growing, let's move on. What else is out there that's on fire? And that's kind of been the world we're living in here over the last 6 months. Yeah, but it takes a lot to pull a 30-minute show together every single day. But Shaun, you probably know this. There's plenty we leave on the cutting room floor.
Oh yeah.
Of topics to discuss. There's always stuff out there.
And do you find that it's been difficult, like at the very beginning of the COVID outbreak, right, when the packing plants were all shutting down and we were concerned about meat supply at the grocery store, it felt really right and natural to 3/4 of the coverage to be COVID on a daily basis. But as time goes on, you're trying to balance your own exhaustion from COVID, and is the audience getting exhausted from some of the every story is a COVID related story. Did you find that, or are you still finding it today?
No, I found that I think that's true. At some point you get to, and it's kind of like the story about the trade deal with China, right? So at some point you get to that kind of realization, this is just going to be here for a while. We're just going to have to live with what it is for a little while. And I think, once we saw that we weren't still losing production out of like the livestock industry, and we weren't backing up that supply chain further and further and further, once we saw that some of the prices were starting to recover, and we got some aid that shipped out there at the end of May, and that is, they're buying some cheese and milk to put in these food boxes and stuff, and prices kind of stabilized a little bit. And we've seen that in our own personal lives, right? The world is a little bit, even though it's different, it's stabilized somewhat. Then I felt like it was kind of time to say, all right, we know this is going to be here. We'll still talk about it, but at some point we got to talk about what else is happening, and what this is normal from here on out. What do we do?
Okay, so Lindsay Smith, our RealAg field editor in Ontario, she wants to know. She's watching on Facebook. What's the story of the summer so far in your mind, then?
Well, I think right now the story of the summer, I really think we're kind of building into a 15 or 20 day weather story, and it seems like, that for us this summer is going to be, we're kind of yeah, we got a few rains and some showers out there, but they're going to be awful spotty. And so the market is kind of getting a little bit nervous about it. And we'll see. And it's been dry-ish, but here's the deal, Shaun. We thought we were never going to grow a crop last year because of
Yeah.
flooding in 2019. And while it wasn't great, it was, not bad. And so, in farming, we tend to worry a lot about it. But until we start seeing that 2011, 2012 drought type scenario in the big parts of the Midwest, I'm not too caught up in it. I think we're just going to have to manage through it. There might be a little, marketing opportunity here with a little bounce weather-wise. But, there's potentials there. If we don't get rain for the next couple of weeks, we could step on it pretty hard.
Yeah, we're really dry in Eastern Canada. If you look at Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, crops are kind of they're going backwards, especially on the corn. And there is some forecasted rain here on the weekend. It's sort of it feels a little bit like you're 2 days away from being 2 days away from a rain. You're kind of chasing that 50%. But hopefully those producers get it. I've said a couple times that 2020 was the year the weather market died. It just could we throw any more adversity at that Midwestern corn crop, and we still worked out way better than people thought. And I think this year with that cut of 5 million acres down to 92 million acres is predicted at this point. We're getting hopeful of a potential weather market, but I'm kind of with you on let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and make sure we're maybe selling into some of this rally, I think.
Well, and I think that's, in talking with some of our, analysts and stuff today, I think that's kind of where they're at is like, hey, here's an opportunity that we didn't think we were going to have a month ago. It's something we ought to be thinking about. You just don't know because you get a big rain event that comes through. They're expecting a little more active tropical storm season this year. Hurricane season, we could see more. All it takes is one of those to hit the Gulf Coast and come right up through the Midwest, and it's over. Right?
Now,
so
yeah,
just don't know.
Yeah. Now, you and I are very used to covering the continent, going from farm show to farm show, conference to conference. It's crazy at certain points in the year. My last travel week was the first week of March. I was at London, Ontario for the London Farm Show. When's the last time you traveled?
Well, I traveled. It was also the first week of March down to Commodity Classic, end of February, 1st of March. And I had trip after trip scheduled for the rest of the year, and I haven't left. I've been home and not gone anywhere. It has been weird.
So what do you think happens with some of these, what happens going forward here? Like we've had World Dairy Expo canceled, Farm Progress finally canceled. That one wasn't a shocker. They're like the last, sort of the last show standing. We in Canada here we had the Western Dairy Seminar canceled. Clinton, it's in March of next year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think happens here? Are we going to have is it kind of a no-show season until big shows till for sure the end of the year? What do you think is going to happen in the U.S.?
Well, okay, so if I were getting out the crystal ball, Farm Journal is putting on a virtual show, and I think that's going to be kind of our first, toe in the water to see can we create this environment and this event that, and here's the deal, farm shows are a lot of fun to go to. It's great to see all the people. It's cool to see all the products, but it is a challenge from that many people in one place logistics standpoint with everything going on with coronavirus. So yeah. I think this virtual event type thing may be maybe in the future we get back to a hybrid version, but I don't know. I just, until we can get a little more certainty about the safety of bringing that many people into one place in an enclosed environment, I have a hard time seeing that stuff kicking back off. I used to give quite a few speeches around to different, farm groups and meetings and stuff like that. We're not doing any of that either, and I guess some of those will end up being virtual, but, I don't know. It's definitely going to be an adjustment, and I'm one thing about being in rural parts of the country in the U.S., and I'm assuming Canada's the same way, is that when you get these farm shows together, it's just nice to go see people. It's nice to go and talk with people that are doing the work that you're doing, and have that connection, pick their brain, what ideas do they have, what can you learn? And so I think there's going to be some solitude that's going to go along with this. And I don't know, so I would just encourage everybody to find a way to, have those conversations virtually, because I think it is going to be a hard thing. And Shaun, I will say, social media has been kind of a tough place. People's attitudes, their emotions are raw, and I totally get it. But hopefully we can, give each other a little bit of slack and just treat each other well, because we're all dealing with stuff. I mean, it's true.
I talked to a grower this morning who used to be very active on social media, on Twitter. Used to see him there all the time. He's like, yeah, I still have my account, but I'm a reader. I am no longer a participant. I just got tired of just people just being obnoxious, or not even, he said hurtful. I think that was the word that he had used. So yeah, there's a lot to that, I think. And I think the part about the farm show that we forget, there is the booths, and there is, seeing your favorite sales rep and seeing some of the flashy stuff that most likely a lot of us can't afford. But we kind of forget a little bit that a big part about the farm show is, like you said, getting together with your peers and meeting up at that beer tent and having that, that pint and talking about your crops, how wet it is, how dry it is, what's going on, and the talking about sports.
Yeah,
we can't do that.
I know, and I think there's a lot of value in that camaraderie from an industry standpoint. And so, if I'm trying to look forward and we don't have that, in the near future, I think it's going to be a challenge to continue to connect with people, especially if you feel like when you're on social media, it's just a very attacking or raw emotion type of environment. Yeah. It's not necessarily a nurturing environment. I think it's possible for people to find smaller groups, create your own smaller group of people that you know and respect, and try to do it that way, as opposed to, spending all of your time with the world. But yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge. And then from a technology standpoint, that's why, Farm Journal said, hey, we're going to do this virtual event, was how do you keep up with all the new stuff? Like, even if the rep can't come out to your farm, how are you gonna keep up with what's coming down the pipe?
Well, but I think the debate there, Clinton, is you still, like, do you need a show to do that, or does somebody just go to realagriculture.com or go to agweb.com and see some of those features? Like, it's really going to be fun to sort of watch it all develop, because we've never done it before. Right?
Yeah, it's changing habits, right? It's changing habits.
Absolutely.
Because before we always said, hey, I'll just go to the farm show. Now you may have to go seek some of that stuff out. And there are places that do it and have been doing it. So I think it's just going to be getting used to something that's a little bit different. Rather than taking the next 10 years to get there, we're going to do it the next year.
Right now in Canada, I would say that sentiment amongst farmers is kind of mixed depending on which segment you're in, which we would expect. All farmers don't make money every year. What's kind of the sentiment right now? Of course, 2020, there's an election, so that that's overlaid everything, every piece of discussion that we'll have. But what's the sentiment right now as we're halfway through 2020?
I think there's 2020, I think we started the year with lots of optimism that, hey, it can't be any worse than 2019. And as you and I and everybody watching at home knows, it's been a little bit more of a challenge than any of us expected. I think it's more of a kind of head down, nose down, kind of push through it and see what I can do by the end of the end of the year. Here in the U.S., we've gotten a little bit of a backstop with some support for prices and different things. Not tons of money for people, but I think that kind of helped stop the running for the doors kind of thing. Like, okay, well, maybe with that we might be able to make it if we can get a crop in. If weather continues to be an issue, that I think that could change a little bit. The biggest sector that's, I think, struggling the most is the hog sector. Of the folks working in the pork industry, it just really hasn't bounced back. Everything else has kind of bounced for the most part, not all the way back, but up there a little bit. But hogs have continued to struggle. So, that's kind of the segment and sector of the industry that I've been watching to say, if we can ship some more out, we can get some export sales. Maybe, hogs are cheap here. We've got lots of supplies. Production and processing is back to about where it was. Not all the way, but getting close. Maybe it starts to rebound, but it's probably going to be another couple quarters. So it's going to be that's a tough segment. But I think for the most part, everyone is just kind of like, if I got to be home, I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing and just try to push through, because I can't control everything else. Even the election, you can't control what's going to happen there other than your own vote, right?
Yeah. From some of the payments, we had the MFP, and then for 2 years, then this year the payment program was called CFAP. Have people I've seen, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but top of my head, of 40% of farm income last year was based on some of those government programs. They've been pretty important to keeping some people afloat. Because up here, there's been different pieces of disagreement. If American farmers are getting that, we need to get that too. Some people have said absolutely not, we don't need it, and so it's been kind of, I would say, a real debate in some of the circles. Sure. How have people viewed those payments in the U.S.?
Well, so I think on one hand, I would just, in my experience talking with farmers, a lot of them are like, I would rather not have them. But if you're going to take on our biggest trading partners and say you want to work a new deal and reset your trade, the entire trade landscape, then that's the only way to ensure a backstop while you're doing that. Otherwise, the retaliation gets so bad, we would have had really serious issues. And so I think a lot of folks have felt like, okay, well, we'll grin and take it, even though we didn't necessarily want it. We'd rather have the trade. I think now, hopefully by the time we get to next year, if we can, if the phase one thing even gets close, I think folks will be like, okay, we've got USMCA done. We got to deal with Japan. We got to deal with, Korea. The China thing is close. It's not perfect, but maybe they'll make some of that up next year. I think they'll be looking to try to stand on their own there. And, at that point, either Trump's reelected or he's out of office, right? And so then you got to figure out, well, what does that look like from there? I don't expect payments to continue after this year, because regardless, even if Trump gets reelected, he can't get reelected again, right? Yeah. So he'll be done. And if Biden's elected, then he got elected by getting that vote already. So, at that point, I just don't expect it again next year. I think this is probably it. Unless the pandemic resurges and it gets worse. Yeah.
Do you look forward to having to find out what Kanye West's ag platform is?
Yeah, we've got to call into his people to see if we could get to his ag expert for an interview. I think that would be a really hot take for the industry. It could be really good.
I look forward to it.
Hasn't he been living on a ranch in Montana or somewhere?
I have no idea. But
I think he has. I think he's been on a ranch out in Montana or Wyoming or somewhere like that. So, maybe he's developed some real ag appreciation and roots there. I don't know.
I said yesterday that I asked on Twitter, does it make me a bad person if I want to see Biden, Trump, and Kanye West on a debate stage? And people, no, you like entertainment is what they said.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I think it would be great to have any presidential debate. I'm not sure we're going to get it this year. It's going to be interesting to figure out the rules of the road. It may be a virtual debate like we're having in a conversation now.
That's true. And I think that's a disadvantage for Trump.
Yeah. I think for him, he likes the in-person, immediate reaction. That I think that it will be interesting. I mean, we've got 120 days or so to the election, and there are just a lot of unknowns. We've been looking for from the Biden campaign, kind of who their policy person is going to be on the ag front, and still looking for a name of someone who's going to kind of lead the charge for them. But we're getting close. We should be getting some answers from them post convention, which is kind of end of August.
Yeah. Well, and we up in Canada we get so much U.S. media that we're fully aware. We're bombarded by some of the news cycle coverage in the U.S., even on some of our own news networks. And right now we see a lot of COVID-19 coverage for sure, and the number of cases and kind of what's going on. How are people in your community, what's actually happening? Are you thinking your kids will go to school in the fall? Like I have some friends where they're not really sure if their kids will go to a U.S., from Canada to the U.S. for university because they may not have actually any classes, that will be all online. Like what's happening?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I hate to say that we're like kicking the can down the road here, but we're kind of like playing it week by week, it seems like. At some point, we're going to have to decide, like, are kids going to have to be able to go back to college in August, or is it going to be September? I think they've already said that they will not come back after Thanksgiving, which is the end of November for us. They'll either take those tests, their finals and stuff virtually, and so they won't have a fall break. And so it'll be a shortened semester. And they mainly because if the kids do go home, they don't want them coming back, bringing everything back to campus all at once. For my own kids, and I've got 3 that range from 12 down to 6, through first grade, 7th through first grade. We got a note this week that said, we're planning to have classes normal, but plan B is kind of an A schedule and a B schedule, where a group of kids go Monday, Wednesday, another group go Tuesday, Thursday, and then everybody does e-learning on Friday. And so that is just to kind of space kids out. It's to spread them out in class. They're not really going to have lunch breaks, probably not, recesses and stuff like that. I mean, it's just different.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. And so I think parents are just trying to figure out how concerned should they be, how cautious should they be. If you've got grandparents in town, I think that's where a lot of that caution lies, just because of the risk for, as you get a little older, the risk gets a little bit higher. And so, I haven't heard of a bunch of families that's saying they aren't sending their kids, but there are some. There are a few.
We had a lot of kids, not in school in the springtime because schools, they basically sent everybody home, and so there was a whole bunch of kids that were available for planting and seeding season. We may have a whole bunch of kids available on the farm to do harvest as well, to take this crop off the way it's looking.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Even if we start school, Shaun, I think the hardest part is going to be keeping it going. So we may start school, but then what do you do if one kid ends up, or his parents get coronavirus and they have a positive test? Well, then that child needs to quarantine for 14 days. Do you quarantine the whole class, or do you quarantine the teachers? You know what I'm saying? And so then help. And then if it's that class, well, then is it all the classes? And does that snowball? And I don't know how you navigate all of that stuff. I think it's going to be try it, and then by September we're all back home. Well, I don't know.
And here's our biggest problem, Clint. I know they're trying to get all these other sports going, but the most important one is, how are we going to have college football in the fall? That is the most important question across the board. It's not looking good.
Well, I know some folks are pretty optimistic about it, and I've even talked to some friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll have football. It's gonna happen, no problem." I'm like, I'm not sure. I had some friends that thought we were going to be showing fair animals. Oh, we'll have the fair. It'll be fine. No, we didn't have the fair. It got canceled. How are you going to get that many people, or how are you going to keep that many players on a team where they're face to face the entire time and guarantee everyone's safe? I just don't.
And how did that go over? Like with the state fairs are pretty important in many parts of the U.S. So not having those state fairs, what obviously there's an economic impact, but what was sort of the impact on the people?
Well, and I think there's a lot of families that they invest time and they invest money, and a lot of if you're buying like cattle, you're going to buy them in the fall of the year before. So they already had all the animals bought. A lot of pigs up here, like we'd be showing this week, Shaun. If we were showing hogs, we would have bought them in the middle of March. Well, about the middle of March is when this hit. And so some families already had them and had already spent the money. And so, I'm afraid that it's going to be hard to get people to come back in the same numbers that we had before. At some point the family's going to be like, there's going to be uncertainty again this year. We just don't know. I'm just not going to make the investment.
Yeah.
And then it's a year, then it's 2 years, and then you start to dwindle those shows down to where, hey, the kind of American county fair tradition just really falls apart. And I grew up with it. I was at the fair all the time. I showed state fair, regional, and local. It's a big part of kind of my family's identity and how I grew up. I think it's a cool thing to be a part of. I worry we're not going to have it.
Yeah, and some people say, I've heard some people describe exactly how you just did for some of the farm events and conferences. That,
Right.
You lose that momentum. And I actually think, I gave the example of the Western Dairy Seminar that's canceled for next March already. I think one of the reasons is it's just easy to cancel at this point because COVID-19 is a known thing. Insurance, you're not going to get insurance coverage if you have to cancel. And speakers in the speaker contract, they're not going to let you out if a COVID outbreak happens. And so with all those costs and no certainty on the revenue side, it's easier to say no. And it lines in very closely to the state fair example you just talked about.
Yeah, and I think, in the U.S., the meat processors got some liability protection because we deemed them an essential thing. I think for a lot of different events, even possibly school, without that protection from a liability standpoint, it's pretty hard to make the argument to say not just financially, but hey, liability-wise, we're gonna take a chance at it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just easier to do it virtually at this point, and I hate that it's that way, but until we kind of can sort through this thing and get some sort of vaccine or whatever it takes, it's going to be a hard one for people to get through.
Yeah, and I'm sure you see it too. When I talk to my urban friends versus my rural friends, and I don't want to broad brush it, but there's different attitudes towards it as well, and just how they see masks or how they see the virus spreading or not spreading. Should we be that concerned about it? Shouldn't we? There's big differences of opinion across those sections. That plays into trying to come up with a strategy too.
Yeah, good luck sharing any of those thoughts or feelings on social media, because you're automatically going to be wrong with half of the people you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everybody has their own really passionate feelings, and that's totally legitimate. It's fine. You've actually got to take care of yourself and your family. But it's hard to exactly know, because, and here's the other thing, it's a new virus. We're getting conflicting, as a journalist, we get conflicting reports often.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing we've had with eggs and butter. They're healthy for
coffee.
They're kill you, or coffee. I mean, it's a different report depending on who does the study every week.
Yeah.
So.
And I have never believed the coffee is bad for you reports. I am fully on the 125% caffeinated side. That's me. I don't know about you.
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat. You and I see eye to eye.
Hey, Clint, this has been a lot of fun talking to you. I really, really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, let's do it again. I love it.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in today to RealAg Live. Make sure you check out RealAg Radio at 4:30 Eastern. It's the Farmer Rapid Fire today. We're talking to farmers from across the country, finding out how they're making out in their fields and in their barns and ranches. Thank you very much for getting real and getting connected, and we'll chat again later.